Have you ever wondered about the story of the forgotten Beatle? In the early days when the Beatles were still finding their rhythm, there was a charismatic drummer who was the heart of the band. His name was Pete Best. With his striking good looks and undeniable talent, Pete was the first among the Fab Four to catch the media's eye. His face graced the covers of magazines, stirring a frenzy among fans. He was not just a pretty face, though. Pete was known for his professionalism, keeping steady beats while the rest of the band experimented with their sound. He was the backbone, the steady pulse that kept the band grounded. But as the Beatles were on the brink of signing their first record contract in 1962, a dramatic shift occurred that would redefine the very fabric of the band. But in 1962, as the Beatles secured their first record contract, the unthinkable happened. Without warning or explanation, Pete Best was dismissed from the Beatles. In the summer of 1962, with their first record contract freshly inked, the remaining Beatles members quietly conspired with their manager, Brian Epstein. Despite his personal fondness for Best, Epstein found himself trapped in a difficult position. He stalled, clinging to a sliver of hope that the others would reconsider their decision. But months rolled by and the verdict held. 3 days shy of their first recording session, Epstein summoned Best to his office. In a meeting as brief as it was brutal, he told Best to find another band. No reason was given, no consolation offered. In the wake of Best's departure, an oddball named Ringo Starr was ushered in. He agreed to adopt the band's signature mop-top hairstyle and even pen songs about octopuses and submarines. In just 6 months, Beatlemania had erupted, and the Beatles, now without Pete Best, were global superstars. While the Beatles soared in fame, Pete Best plunged into a deep depression. The sudden dismissal from the band that was on the brink of global stardom was a bitter pill to swallow. The fame that was once within his grasp was now a distant mirage. In the ensuing years, Best grappled with his new reality. The man who was once the heartthrob of many, now spiraled into a vortex of desolation and self-destruction. His attempts to resurrect his music career were met with failure, every setback a harsh reminder of his expulsion from the Beatles. The anguish and bitterness culminated in a libel lawsuit against 2 of his former bandmates in 1965. The accusations flew, the media feasted, but the lawsuit brought little solace to Best. His life seemed to be on a downward spiral, his dreams shattered, replaced by a haze of alcohol and despair. In 1968, at the pinnacle of his desolation, he even contemplated suicide. But fate, it seems, had other plans. His mother, the beacon of hope in his life, pulled him back from the brink, but every fall, they say, contains the seed of a rise. And so it was with Pete Best. The man who had tasted fame and then had it cruelly snatched away began to rebuild his life. In the quiet corners of his struggle, he found love. He met the woman who would become his wife and the mother of his children. This change in his personal life brought about a transformation in his outlook. He began to view his life through a different lens. The fame and adulation that he had once craved now seemed insignificant. In its place, he found something far more profound: a loving family, a stable marriage, and a simple life. He returned to his first love, drumming, not in search of stardom, but for the sheer joy of it. He continued to tour and record albums well into the 2000s, playing for the love of music rather than the applause of a crowd. Pete Best began to see that he had gained something much more valuable than fame: a loving family, a stable marriage, and a simple life. Pete Best's life after the Beatles was not one of fame and glory, but it was one of fulfillment and contentment. His journey didn't end with those early days of rock and roll, it merely took a different path. He spent his post-Beatles years immersed in the music he loved, touring Europe, recording albums, and embracing the rhythm that coursed through his veins. His life was simple, but full. It was graced by the love of a big family, a stable marriage, and the joy of playing the drums, his lifelong passion. He found solace and satisfaction in these simple pleasures. He reflected on his life, on the fame and adulation that could have been his. Yet he realized what he had gained from his experiences was far more valuable. He had gained perspective, contentment, and a deep sense of self. So, was anything really lost? In the grand scheme of Pete Best's life, maybe not. But what was gained meant so much more to him than any amount of fame ever could.